I've mentioned before that I don't particularly care much for the revelation at the end of 03. This was not always the case. When I first played it, I remember liking it quite a bit, though I only played chunks of it at a friend's house, so I didn't get the full experience. But even once I managed to play it from beginning to end, I still felt that 03 was probably the best of the series. My opinion in that regard has not changed, but in playing it recently I felt that the big reveal didn't really leave that much of an impact, as it originally did. In this video I intend to explain to the best of my ability why I feel that way now, while also throwing some ideas as to how the reveal could have worked better, or had a bigger impact. For that reason I will be uploading two videos. In this first one I will explain my issues with the reveal, while a second larger video will focus on ways in which I think it could have worked better. Though for that purpose I will be rewriting and changing certain elements within the story of the series up to 03. Now, before we get started, I feel I should clarify that this video will contain spoilers for the 0 series as well as the X series, so there's your warning. First of all, let's do a quick summary of the event in question, just in case you somehow clicked on this video without any prior knowledge of 03. By the end of the game, you face off against Omega, a large Reploid that is central to the plot of the game. After a tough fight, it is revealed that Omega's true form is that of the original Zero, and you are told by the game's main antagonist that you are no true hero, and that while you may look the part, Omega is the one and only Zero. After that big revelation, you fight Omega once more, and after a fierce battle you seem to emerge victorious, as Omega is laying on his knees before you, only for the Dark Elf to incapacitate you and begin to restore him. Just when all hope seems lost, the Guardians and the original X swoop in, and the day is saved. Although at a cost. Not only is Zero, the legendary hunter, gone for good, but the ensuing explosion apparently kills the remaining Guardians, and in protecting you from it, X spends the last of his energy, effectively ending his life. So, that sounds like a rather memorable ending. The battle is won, but the good guys have certainly incurred a lot of losses. Not to mention what should be a very shocking reveal for the protagonist, having to come to terms with the fact that the identity you've come to accept as your own is revealed to be a lie, and you are nothing but an unknown Reploid that just happens to resemble the legendary Hunter Zero, for reasons that remain a mystery. There certainly seems like there is a lot that can be further explored, and more revelations could come from this. That could be rather interesting. Except, that's not really what happened. You see, there is a line of dialogue from X that explains Omega's body, and in doing so he substantially diminishes any interesting development that could have come from this reveal. X explains that Omega is simply in possession of your original body, and that while your body is a replica, your heart is the same, as it always has been. And that is all that matters, which, don't get me wrong, it's a nice message, but the way X simply sums it all up as "that's all" when referring to Omega severely undermines the possible impact that such a revelation could have had, especially if they kept the idea that Omega is Zero in more ways than just the body. As for the actual ending, we do get a scene where CL reassures Zero by saying that his heart is what defines him, leading Zero to thank her, and then the game ends. We don't get a lot of time to see the aftermath of that revelation and how Zero is processing it. In fact, he doesn't seem all that concerned. The only characters that show some degree of concern are CL and X, and that's mostly because they are worried about how the truth may affect Zero, which again seems to be not at all. And while CL only learns of it after the fact, X knew all along, and if he was concerned that learning Omega's true nature could have somehow shaken Zero's resolve, he should have told him beforehand. That way it would not have come up as a surprise in the middle of a fight for the sake of the world. Either way, I feel like the twist at the end should have elicited a bit of a bigger reaction from Zero. You know, like how he reacted in X4.
Ah! No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What am I fighting for?
Okay, maybe not exactly like that, but the point I'm trying to get at is that we don't get much time to see Zero process what should be an earth-shattering revelation. At the very least, because he learned that his body was used by an evil mastermind yet again in order to create a threat that almost eradicated all life on the planet.
Zero looked awfully down in the dumps.
Oh, are you worried about him, Lair?
No, not really. As an operator, I'm just concerned about the overall welfare of the team. That's all.
Zero's been used before by Sigma to create a virus. He's upset that his data was used in an attempt to destroy the world.
Oh my. Poor Zero.
He shouldn't blame himself. The problem's already been solved anyway. It seems Sigma may be involved in this new threat as well. Zero wants to take care of him for good this time. So do I. Vile. Sigma. Just like old times.
Zero? Does it remind you of the virus?
So, you heard about that? He tried to use me to destroy the world. That's why I've got to find him and turn him into a pile of molten scrap. Be my navigator. Help me find that maverick before he fulfills his plan.
I'll say one last thing regarding this before I move on. Since the twist takes place near the very end of the game, we don't really have that much time left to fully explore the ramifications of it. This is something that could have been addressed in 04. However, that was not the case. Without going into much detail about that game, the fact that Zero is using a replica body, and that his original body was used to cause an unimaginable amount of death and destruction during the Elf Wars, is never mentioned. And Zero, as well as everyone else in the Resistance, is carrying on as usual, as if nothing happened. The other issue I have with the twist comes down to the fight with Omega's final form itself. I mentioned in a previous video that I wish they kept the X-Series design to emphasize the difference between the original and the replica. It doesn't have to be exactly the same design as X5, X6, but maybe a body that applies both design elements from the Zero and X-Series. Simply having a palette swap and a white aura didn't really help that much to imply that this Omega is the true Zero. As for the fight itself, keep in mind that we are told by Dr. Bile that not only is Omega in possession of the original body, but also that thanks to some modifications his true potential has been unleashed, which leads me to think that he is in a similar state to the Awakened or Maverick Zero that can be fought in X5 if you fail to stop the Eurasia colony from crashing. Now then, though that specific event is not canon, keep in mind that after you fight him as X in that game, while the game does force a draw by the end of the fight, I fully believe that Awakened Zero is the ultimate winner. Simply by the fact that in this cutscene, he seems to be able to move in order to intercept this attack from Sigma, an attack that would have otherwise killed X, who can only lie on the ground barely managing to remain conscious. So, let's go back to 03. We have on one side an inferior replica of Zero versus the original, with all its unlocked potential. The same potential that allowed it to beat the original X in combat. The Reploid that holds within him infinite potential. And even if you want to argue that the replica body is identical, and Bile is simply trying to mess with you by saying that you are inferior, it doesn't really change the fact that the awakened state should give Omega a clear edge over you. And yet, you do win the fight. While Omega certainly has access to a few moves that are unavailable to you, by the end of the fight Omega is on his knees and cannot continue the fight without the Dark Elf intervening and restoring his health. At that point, I could no longer think of Omega as stronger than you. The Dark Elf does repel you with a barrier, which causes you to fall on your knees, but because it was forced to intervene in the fight in order to protect Omega from certain destruction, I consider that to be Omega's proof of utter defeat. This could have been fixed by making it so the roles are reversed. Despite beating Omega during the fight, you are shown to be on your knees, while he is standing and preparing to finish you off, only to be saved at the last second by X and the Guardians, who would then get some long-awaited revenge on Omega by laying into him, dealing enough damage to turn the tables, forcing the Dark Elf to emerge, only for its curse to be broken after it exerts itself by repelling the Guardians while attempting to heal Omega. The time the Guardians provide here, as well as the encouragement from X, gives you the strength to stand up and finish Omega once and for all. In this scenario, the day is ultimately saved. Zero and the Guardians get their own chance to show their skills, and Omega doesn't come off as weak instead of the massive threat that he should be. Alright then, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say about that. Let me know in the comments if you agree or if you disagree, of course. and I'll try to upload the second video as quickly as possible. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time.